everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to take a look back at the explosive action adventure called McBain. Released back on September the 20th, 1991, it stars Christopher Walken, Maria Conchita Alonso, Michael Ironside, Steve James and Jay Paterson, and it was directed by James Clickenhouse. The story first takes place in the Vietnam War in 1973, where we see prisoner of war Bobby McBain rescued by US soldiers. He gives thanks especially to a soldier named Roberto Santos, who instigated the rescue mission even though the squad were on their way back home. Now 18 years later in Colombia, we see Santos as a leader of a rebel group who looked to capture the corrupt president and bring an end to his corrupt regime. Despite apprehending him, Santos is forced to surrender his position when he sees innocent civilians being threatened. He withdraws his position but is brutally shot by the president in front of television cameras. Bobby McBain is distraught at seeing Santos' murder on the screens and is soon tracked down by his sister, who asks for his aid in continuing the cause against the president and his government. McBain reunites with his veteran buddies and they all set out on a dangerous mission to overturn the corrupt regime. Now, when looking back at McBain, despite being released in 1991, it is absolutely in the classic spirit of the 1980s action genre, an action-adventure that is full of the escapism, testosterone and machismo, that real B-grade grittiness that made the decade and those movies in particular so special. And if you grew up in that time, you'll see the clear DNA of other great classic movies such as Rambo First Blood Part 2, Mission in Action, Uncommon Valor, Predator and Iron Eagle. It's all there in both tone and spirit. The familiar men on a mission narrative where a group of heroes look to defeat forces of evil, carrying all of those themes of brotherhood, teamwork, justice, loyalty. It's all there in broad and basic terms, but it's still compelling all the same. And despite the anti-war commentary on revolution, political upheaval and drug use, it's really best to view McBain as a glorious over-the-top action movie and nothing more. And to say that it's violent is an absolute understatement. This is actually super violent as we get multiple shootouts, stabbings, carpet bombings of villages. There's absolutely no sentimentality in terms of who is killed amongst all of the violence. Once more, we are looking at a pre-CGI era where we have real explosions, real fights, real stunts, and it actually looks pretty great on the screen, especially in a HD resolution version of the film. And the body count here is absolutely mega. Yes, the violence is tonally more comic strip, but the amount of kills here is still startling, even for a film of this type. But yet the film does have a pace and energy and non-stop momentum that keeps you watching all the way and most importantly entertained. Now, having said all of that, to enjoy this film really requires a severe amount of suspension of disbelief. There is multiple stupid and silly elements that will have you laughing or rolling your eyes, and a more hardened movie critic will absolutely rip this movie apart. Top of the list surely goes to the sequence where McBain and his friends are mid-air on their way to Colombia, and on a plane they come across another pilot who is trying to halt their access, and McBain kills this pilot via the use of a single pistol, shooting through his own cockpit window and actually killing the pilot with clinical precision. I can't deny that I simply laughed when I saw this sequence. As with the following scene where we see other planes being tracked down by missiles with none too convincing shots of homing missiles in the process. We look at one of their friends named Frank Bruce, being conveniently a multi-millionaire with access to satellite technology and enough money to fund their operations. We ask how exactly a group of 5 men can be enough to help a small rebel force against superior military and numbers and overturn a government. How could they all just pick up the reins again after being out of combat for over 18 years? They seemingly head off to Colombia, busting down all of these drug gangs and their fortresses in order to steal their money, with no real sense of setup or protection, just haphazardly blasting their way through, killing anybody that's in their way. And all of these flaws could have been avoided with a bit of smarter writing and screenplay, I also feel that the plot itself could have been revolved much more around a rogue stealth rescue mission rather than a revolutionary coup, and that would have made it a bit more plausible and credible as to the previous movies that I've referred to before. Now, all of the cast of actors are absolutely fine here. Christopher Walken in the lead is always going to carry a certain sense of presence and gravitas, and here he covers familiar territory previously seen from both the likes of The Deer Hunter and The Dogs of War. And to be honest, this is material that doesn't really provide him with enough depth that is worthy of his talent. It's always a pleasure to see Maria Conchita Alonso here as Santos' sister, and she's really the only one character that gives any semblance of emotional weight or range. She is actually good here, still looking very attractive as what she was throughout the late 80s and early 90s. And there's always a curiosity seeing her during this time that makes you wonder that had she been given the certain right roles as to whether she could have been a substantial female action star without the 80s and early 90s. Always great again to see the late great Michael Ironside here in much more of a smaller role as Frank Bruce. He's always an actor that I felt should have been bigger throughout his time within Hollywood than what he actually was. And again, we'll see a whole host of actors who aren't prolific names as such, but they always pop up in all of those classic 80s movies, each of them once more having a notable charisma and characterization about them. Now, sadly, McBain was literally a non-entity upon its release at the box office, only managing to generate around $456,000 from a $16 million budget. As stated before, it's clearly an 80s action adventure, but this type of film was overfamiliar and probably seen as stale by the early 1990s, especially in 1991, where we were all still wowed over the wonders of Terminator 2 Judgment Day changing the game with its CGI innovations. But as I mentioned, McBain, overall, if viewed as solely an action adventure, is an absolute blast and fun, and a reminder again of that typical movie that we were all enamored with when growing up within the 1980s. Now, yes, Christopher Walken did make a similar movie in Dogs of War prior to this release, and in comparison, that's a film where you do have a bit more intelligence and credibility and a much more serious look in terms of its subject matter. But I would still choose McBain over that film, as I felt Dogs of War was overall a bit more slower and not having the same kind of verve and energy and explosiveness that what we saw in McBain. And judged on that particular level, you will always find something to enjoy when looking at this particular movie. Very much the Expendables before we got the Expendables later on in the 2000s. So there's my thoughts and feelings when looking back at McBain from the early 1990s. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any further movies, television series, or any other topics for the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, then also let me know within the comments, and I'll see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.